Diaries of Adolf Hitler became one of the main scams in the European press in its entire history, and then an exhibit in a tiny, one-of-a-kind Viennese museum. These are the diaries of Adolf Hitler, the ones which are fake, but the story behind these pieces of paper is worth $1 million and not one.
Good evening, now it's happened again. Today the Pope in the eternal city of Rome.
My dear, find Heidemann for me. Yes, today they shot at the Patriarch of Rome. Let him go to this Turkey. At least one German will go to Turkey and not vice versa. Well, okay. On May the 13th, 1981, the chief editor of the magazine Stern, one of the oldest and most popular in Germany, is looking for his best reporter, Gerd Heidemann. It's true, there was an incident in Turkey, and who will research it better than Gerd? No one. Gerd Heidemann is a multifaceted personality. He is really considered the best Stern's snoop, but he has another passion besides his work. Heidemann, more than 3 decades after the war, continues to love the Nazis. Among his friends, there are a lot of former SS officers, but moreover, one day Heidemann recognizes his idol, Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring's yacht in an old, wrecked boat. Such a treasure cannot be missed. And Heidemann spends all his money to pay out the loan taken to buy the yacht. He even had to encumber his apartment. But the purchase is worth it. Now there is a place to have parties with his SS friends and even dive into a romantic relationship with Göring's daughter. Heidemann is such a good reporter that everyone turns a blind eye to these eccentricities. My dear, how's Heidemann? Couldn't find him. He's drinking again with his Gestapo friends. But Heidemann is busy with something else. He is in the office of the most important boss, the publisher of the magazine, and there he's waiting for the chief editor. Good. The matter he has come to the top management with is going to be a sensation. And this is not the Museum of Art Fakes. Rather, on the contrary, Kunsthistorisches Museum, Museum of Art History, is one of the largest museums in the world. But fakes can be found here, too. However, rather specific ones. Jan Vermeer is one of the most famous and expensive, or rather priceless painters in the world, and one of the rarest painters as well. We only know 34 of his paintings. And of course, to forge Vermeer is expensive in the literal sense of the word, but at first he himself had to be somebody else. In Russia, there are no pictures by Vermeer. In Austria, only one. Here it is. In the artist's studio, here Vermeer himself acts as a falsifier and forges reality. And once it was written on this picture, not Johannes Vermeer, but Peter de Hock. The painting in the artist's studio comes to Vienna in 1813. It was bought by a rich count, and he was not buying Vermeer, but the artist Peter de Hock, much more valuable at that time. The picture of allegedly the hawk was sold to the Count for 50 florins, not big but still money. And how much would a proud aristocrat give for a Vermeer? In general, to be on the safe side, the signature under the picture was changed for another of a more expensive painter. It's only later in the world of art and in the world in general that they understood that Vermeer is better, more interesting and more expensive than the hawk, and the picture was again written to the true author. Then during the war, the picture of now Vermeer was again sold. Who would you think to? To Adolf Hitler himself. Fortunately, he wasn't possessing it, as well as other privileges, for long, and the painting, freed, found its way to the museum. But this isn't the only connection between Vermeer, Vienna, the Nazis, and fakes. In the Museum of Art Fakes, there is a fine work of the artist Van Meegeren. It depicts lions humbly lying down before the prophet Daniel, instead of pulling him to pieces. This is a fake of the British artist Brydon Riviere. Henricus Antonius van Meegeren became an icon for all falsifiers. He was born back in the late 19th century, at one time with the great artists, and if he was a man of other talents and inclinations, could jump on the swiftly rushing train of new art. Other young people of his age and in his time are engaged in a completely different art. They indulge in the bacchanalia of ordinary guys, like Pablo Picasso, make hurricanes in quiet gardens, like Oskar Kokoschka, or you cannot even understand it straight away, as with Vasily Kandinsky. But Van Meegeren does not care about this new thing. He's attracted to the old. Here are his early paintings. They look like they were painted about 300 years before his birth. What is Kokoschka? What is Kandinsky? He is so comfortable in the world of old masters, but this world is so not interesting to anyone that there's only one way of life. After several successful copies, Van Meegeren paints a fake. He passes the painting Christ in Emmaus off as a Vermeer. Famous art historians solemnly confirm this is the lost masterpiece, and Christ in Emmaus as if a Vermeer, but in fact a Van Meegeren, is sold for £50,000. This is victory. Van Meegeren will sell his next fake Vermeer not to a first-comer, but to Reichsmarshal Hermann Göring, the same one whose boat the stern journalist will buy later. But while Göring is in power, he adores the art and his official position, which helps to take over this art. Everything was revealed right after the war. They found the painting among Göring's possessions, found who the seller was, Van Meegeren, and prosecuted him for cooperation with the Nazis. But wait, Meegeren shouted, "I must be awarded. I sold the accursed invaders a fake." "Ah, fake," shouted people in the court, and still sentenced Van Meegeren, however, only to 1 year. And there have not been found any new pictures of Vermeer since then. There are still 34, and one of them is in Vienna. And the work of Van Meegeren is also in Vienna, but in a specially dedicated museum. At the end of April, Hitler turned 56. For his birthday, the USSR, Britain and the United States gave him a grandiose bombing of Berlin. It was decided to transfer the Führer's possessions to the Bavarian residence. A whole air fleet was formed, as many as 10 airplanes to transport this valuable cargo. The last of the planes had 10 heavy suitcases on board and crashed near the Czechoslovak border. 36 years later, the editor-in-chief of the magazine Stern holds the diaries of Adolf Hitler. It was them that were in suitcases on the last airplane. It was them that were picked up after the plane crash by some local farmers. It was them that Gerd Heidemann was able to buy. And it was them that the publisher of the magazine Stern buys, paying millions of Deutsche Marks for each. 27 such notebooks were kept in the secret coffers of Heidemann's confidant, and that's what they said.
I met with stormtroopers in Bavaria. I rewarded them with medals. They stood with tears in their eyes. Brave men. I think we should have dealt with the Jews a bit softer. Eve says my breath stinks.
Surprisingly, the publisher of the magazine, who paid 19 million Deutsche Marks for these diaries, that is $11,019,000, believed in this nonsense. The plane with the Führer's things crashed in the spring of 1945 for real, and there could have been anything there, but Adolf Hitler never wrote any diaries. It was this man, Konrad Kujau, who was diligently writing them out with his hand, a longtime friend of the reporter Heidemann and the owner of a store selling Nazi symbols, a man, as they say, deep in the material. But since the management of Stern doesn't want to prematurely leak its imaginary sensation, the diaries don't undergo a full examination, and nevertheless, the authenticity is confirmed by several extremely respectable historians, and the manuscript itself is grapho-analyzed. However, the samples of Hitler's handwriting for comparison were given by Kujau and Heidemann. My dear, it seems we're ready. Call a press conference, Finally, the magazine decides to publish the diaries. A big sensation and a grandiose scandal are brewing simultaneously. Vienna is the city where nothing is thrown out. Here is one of the many antique shops. There is much to buy here. You can buy a watch. You can buy a vampire knife for butter. You can buy old playing cards. Well, or a wardrobe. And who knows, maybe Viennese falsifiers of art objects come to this shop too, because everything begins here. For the radiographic analysis, not to establish the young age of the picture, the canvas should be of the same age as the artist's real pictures. You counterfeit Matisse, the beginning of the 20th century. Like Turner or our itinerants, take the 19th centuries. If you want to paint a Gainsborough, take the canvas of the 18th century. Another indicator of authenticity, although more psychological, is craquelures, those romantic cracks on the paint. You see craquelures? It's definitely an old one. This is another star of the Museum of Art Fakes, Tom Keating. Here he portrayed the landscape in the style of the French impressionist Jean Puy. Keating got a reputation of a great eccentric in the world of falsifiers. This man, deceased over 30 years ago, dreamed like a child. He wanted to sell so much fake art that he could have a food carpet, a carpet of money, and he had all the potential for this. Keating was most successful doing works of Samuel Palmer, an English romantic painter. At first, no one knew about it though, and one of the works was auctioned off for £15,000. This money had never been paid even for a real Palmer. It all ended quite unexpectedly. In 1976, Keating called a press conference and announced that European museums, galleries, auctions, and private collections were flooded with fakes. Ah, everyone shouted. Calm down, Keating said. It only takes to make x-rays of my pictures, and you'll see the word that I call what I think about the world of commercial art. And the word is shit. Stern magazine can be bought today at any corner of the globe, from Novosibirsk to Vienna.
Grüß Gott. Haben Sie Stern-Magazin?
Well, let's see what they write about. Well, obviously about the elections in the United States. And here's what the magazine Stern wrote in April 1983. Sensation. Hitler's diaries found. Stern begins the publication of diaries. They enter into syndications with the largest periodicals of the world. The circulation exceeds 2 million. Publishers are rubbing their hands. They expect that the giant investments made will bring a huge return. The chief editor is experiencing a career peak. And only Gerd Heidemann disappeared somewhere once again. He is drinking with the Nazis, they thought in the editorial office, and gave up on him. Sobering comes quickly. The State Archive requires the diaries of the former head of the state for examination, and the examination is merciless. The cover of the notebooks contains polyamide 6, the material that was discovered in 1938, was first mass-produced in 1943, but it couldn't have been there in 1933. The paper fiber and bleach are also of post-war production. All Hitler's confessions turn out to be copied from the book Hitler, Speeches and Appeals. Even the Gothic letter of the initials of Hitler on the cover is not A but F. And no one has noticed this. Kuyao and Heidemann are sentenced to 4.5 and 5 years in prison for fraud. Kuyao comes out before time and soon dies of cancer. Heidemann sells Göring's yacht but is still in debt. To date, he still has to pay the defrauded publishers several €100,000. My dear, get my things packed. And you get ready too. The magazine Stern is in a knockout. The administration immediately resigns, given 1,000 apologies. European media have never had a more scandalous scandal, and the resonance from the publication of Hitler's false diaries can still be felt. Hitler's fake diaries escaped execution. On the contrary, they've become honorable exhibits of the Vienna Museum of Art Fakes. Next to them, there are the best falsifiers in the world. Van Meegeren, a man who forged Vermeer and deceived the entire Nazi elite. And Keating, who defrauded half the world but confessed everything himself, and other masters of artificial art.